The morning mist clung to the ancient pines surrounding the Crescent Moon Pack's territory like ghostly fingers, but nothing could hide the tension that crackled through the air. Sarah knelt in the center of the pack's gathering circle, her wrists bound with silver-laced rope that burned against her pale skin. The metal was meant to suppress her wolf, to keep her from shifting, but the pain was nothing compared to the betrayal that cut through her heart. "Sarah Nightshade," Elder Marcus's voice boomed across the clearing, his weathered face stern beneath his graying hair. "You stand accused of practicing forbidden magic, of consorting with dark forces that threaten the very foundation of our pack." The Omega kept her head high despite the murmurs of fear and anger rippling through the crowd of werewolves surrounding her. These people had been her family, her protectors. Now they looked at her as if she were a monster. "The evidence is clear." Beta Thomas stepped forward, his once kind eyes now cold as Winterstone. 3 pack members fell mysteriously ill after you healed them. Young Emma's fever returned worse than before, and she spoke of shadows dancing around your hands. Sarah's voice remained steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I only tried to help them. My healing abilities have never harmed anyone before." "Silence." Alpha Roderick's voice cut through her defense like a blade. The pack leader stood tall and imposing, his dark hair streaked with silver, authority radiating from every line of his body. "Your grandmother was suspected of witchcraft before her mysterious disappearance. It seems the taint runs in your bloodline." The mention of her grandmother sent a sharp pang through Sarah's chest. Grandmother Ilara had vanished when Sarah was 12, leaving behind only whispered warnings about hiding her gifts and cryptic mentions of an ancient prophecy. Now, 8 years later, those same gifts had become her death sentence. "The pack laws are clear," Elder Marcus continued, consulting an ancient leather-bound tome. "Any wolf found guilty of practicing dark magic shall be executed at sunset. The corruption cannot be allowed to spread." A collective gasp rose from the gathered werewolves. Some nodded in grim agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably. Sarah caught sight of her childhood friend Maya in the crowd, tears streaming down her face as she pressed her hand to her mouth in horror. "You cannot be serious," Sarah breathed, disbelief making her voice crack. "I am Omega. I am Pack. I would never—" "The decision has been made," Alpha Roderick declared with finality. "At sunset, when the moon begins to rise, your life will be forfeit. May the moon goddess have mercy on your corrupted soul." As the crowd began to disperse, their whispered conversations filled with fear and excitement at the coming execution. Sarah remained kneeling in the dirt. The silver ropes cut deeper into her wrists as she clenched her fists, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. But deep in her chest, her wolf howled in anguish, calling out to the moon for salvation that might never come. Suistar Tabardin Chapter 2, The Alpha King's Arrival. The rhythmic thunder of hoofbeats echoed through the forest long before the royal guard came into view. Sarah, now locked in a silver-barred cage at the center of the pack's territory, lifted her head at the sound. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the bars, and she estimated only 3 hours remained until her execution. Alpha Roderick emerged from the pack house, his face creased with confusion and what might have been fear. Behind him, Beta Thomas and the pack's warriors formed a hasty reception line as the approaching riders burst through the tree line. The royal guard was a sight to behold. 20 wolves in human form, clad in midnight blue uniforms with silver threading that caught the light like moonbeams. Their horses were magnificent beasts, bred for strength and speed, but it was the figure leading them that stole the breath from every throat. Alpha King Darius sat atop a massive black stallion, his presence so commanding that even the wind seemed to still in deference. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with raven black hair that fell just past his collar and piercing silver eyes that seemed to see straight through to one's soul. His jaw was sharp, his features aristocratic, and power radiated from him in waves that made every wolf present feel the urge to bow. "Your Majesty," Alpha Roderick dropped to one knee, his pack following suit in a cascade of submission. "We were not expecting—" "Rise." The Alpha King's voice was deep and rich, carrying the authority of one born to rule. He dismounted with fluid grace, his long leather coat billowing behind him. "I received word of unusual magical disturbances in this territory. I've come to investigate." Sarah's breath caught as those silver eyes swept the gathering and landed on her cage. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. There was something in his gaze, surprise, recognition, hunger, that made her wolf stir restlessly despite the silver bars. "This is the source of the disturbance?" King Darius approached her cage with measured steps, ignoring the nervous shuffling of the pack members around him. "What is her crime?" "Witchcraft, Your Majesty." Elder Marcus stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly. "She used dark magic in the guise of healing, corrupting pack members and threatening our very existence. We were preparing for her execution at sunset." The Alpha King circled the cage slowly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. She found herself unable to look away, trapped by the intensity of his gaze. There was something ancient in those silver depths, something that called to the deepest parts of her soul. "What is your name, Omega?" His voice was softer now, meant for her ears alone. "Sarah Nightshade, Your Majesty." She lifted her chin defiantly, refusing to cower before him despite her precarious situation. "Nightshade," he repeated, as if tasting the name. A flash of something, memory, recognition, crossed his features before his expression became unreadable once more. "Tell me of this magic you supposedly practiced." "I heal people," Sarah said simply. "I place my hands on their wounds or illnesses, and I make them better. It's a gift I was born with, not dark magic learned from forbidden texts." "Lies!" Beta Thomas snarled. "She corrupted 3 pack members. Their conditions worsened after her healing. It's proof of her dark arts." King Darius held up a hand for silence, his attention still focused entirely on Sarah. "Show me," he commanded. "Your Majesty, surely you don't intend to—" Alpha Roderick began, but fell silent at the king's sharp look. Without warning, the Alpha King drew a silver blade from his belt and drew it across his palm, opening a deep cut that immediately began to bleed. He extended his hand through the bars of the cage. "Heal me," he commanded. "If you truly possess the gift you claim, prove it. If your magic is dark, it will not be able to touch one protected by the moon goddess's own blessing." Sarah stared at the offered hand, her heart racing. This could be her salvation or her doom. With shaking fingers, she reached through the bars and gently took his hand in both of hers. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through her entire body. Her wolf sang with joy, recognizing something profound and life-changing in the contact. She closed her eyes and let her healing gift flow, warm golden light emanating from her palms. When she opened her eyes, the cut was completely healed, leaving only unblemished skin. But more shocking was the expression on the Alpha King's face: wonder, possessiveness, and something that looked dangerously like desire. "Impossible," he breathed, and then, loud enough for the entire pack to hear, "This Omega is no witch. She bears the mark of the moon goddess herself." The gasps and murmurs that rippled through the crowd were nothing compared to the earthquake that occurred when Alpha King Darius spoke his next words. "I claim right of protection over this Omega. Any who seek to harm her will answer to me personally." Chapter 3. The Bond Awakens. The silence that followed King Darius's declaration was deafening. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as she stared up at the most powerful werewolf in the realm, the man who had just claimed protection over her with words that carried the weight of law. Alpha Roderick's face had gone ashen, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, this Omega is a threat to pack stability. Our laws clearly state—" "Your laws," King Darius interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl, "are superseded by royal decree, and I have just decreed that this Omega is under my personal protection." His silver eyes swept the gathered wolves with predatory intensity. "Does anyone wish to challenge this decision?" The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. No werewolf, no matter how powerful, would dare challenge the Alpha King directly. Such an action would mean instant death. "Release her from the cage," Darius commanded, his tone brooking no argument. Beta Thomas stepped forward reluctantly, producing the silver key with shaking hands. The moment the cage door swung open, Sarah felt the oppressive weight of the silver bars lift from her shoulders. Her wolf stretched restlessly, finally able to breathe freely again. King Darius extended his hand to her, and after a moment's hesitation she took it. The same electric current that had flowed between them during the healing now pulsed through their joined hands, stronger than before. She gasped softly, her eyes widening as she met his intense gaze. "Can you feel it?" he murmured, his voice too low for the others to hear. "The pull between us?" Sarah nodded wordlessly, She could feel it, a golden thread of connection that seemed to bind their souls together, growing stronger with every passing moment. Her grandmother's words echoed in her memory. "When you find your true mate, child, you'll know it in your bones, in your blood, in the very essence of your being." But this was impossible. She was just an Omega from a small pack, and he was the Alpha King of all werewolves. Such bonds didn't form across such vast social divides, did they? "Thomas!" Alpha Roderick barked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Bring the evidence of her corruption. Surely His Majesty will reconsider when he sees—" "There will be no evidence," King Darius cut him off sharply, "because there is no corruption." He turned to face the pack, still holding Sarah's hand. "This Omega possesses a gift that has been lost to our kind for over a century. True healing blessed by the moon goddess herself. Her abilities are not dark magic, but divine grace." Elder Marcus stepped forward, his ancient voice trembling. "Your Majesty, if I may, there are old stories, legends of healers who could cure any ailment with a touch, but those bloodlines were thought to be extinct." "Clearly they are not," Darius replied, his thumb stroking across Sarah's knuckles in a gesture that sent shivers up her arm. "This Omega is more precious than you realized. Her gifts could save countless lives." "The pack members she treated," Beta Thomas interjected desperately. "They grew sicker after her healing. How do you explain that?" King Darius's expression darkened. "That, Beta, is exactly what I intend to investigate. True healing cannot cause harm, which means someone or something else is responsible for their continued illness." His gaze swept the crowd with deadly promise. "And when I find the real culprit, they will face the full weight of royal justice." Several pack members shifted uncomfortably, and Sarah caught glimpses of fear flickering across familiar faces. Someone here knew more than they were saying. "Captain Morrison," King Darius addressed the head of his royal guard, a stern-faced man with graying temples. "Establish a perimeter around the pack territory. No one enters or leaves without my express permission. We have a mystery to solve." "At once, Your Majesty," the captain responded, immediately dispatching his men. As the guards moved to secure the area, King Darius finally released Sarah's hand, though she could still feel the phantom warmth of his touch. "You will come with me," he told her, his tone gentler now. "You're no longer safe among your own pack." "Where will you take me?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To the royal palace," he replied, and the gasps from the pack members were audible even over the growing wind. "You will be under my personal protection until this matter is resolved." Alpha Roderick's composure finally cracked. "Your Majesty, please, taking an unmated Omega to the palace, the scandal alone could what?" King Darius's voice turned arctic. "Are you questioning my judgment, Alpha Roderick? Or perhaps you're suggesting that I cannot control myself around a female under my protection?" No, Your Majesty, I would never—" "Good." The Alpha King's smile was sharp as a blade, because such implications would be treasonous, and we both know how I deal with treason. Fayasin Mertibri, the Chapter 4, Secrets in the Shadows. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Sarah found herself in the pack house's main hall, sitting across from the Alpha King at a massive oak table. The other pack leaders had been dismissed, leaving them alone except for 2 royal guards positioned discreetly near the entrances. King Darius had removed his leather coat, revealing a white linen shirt that emphasized the powerful lines of his chest and shoulders. His silver eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. But there was something else there now. Curiosity and perhaps the beginning of genuine care. "Tell me about your grandmother," he said, his voice quiet but commanding. Elder Marcus mentioned she was suspected of witchcraft before her disappearance. Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm mug of tea someone had brought her, grateful for something to do with her nervous energy. Grandmother Ilara was special. She had gifts like mine, but stronger. She could heal anything. Broken bones, poisoned blood, even emotional wounds that had festered for years. And she vanished 8 years ago, when I was 12. Sarah's voice grew soft with old pain. She left in the middle of the night, but not before giving me this. She reached beneath her shirt and pulled out a pendant that had been hidden from view, a silver wolf's head, with eyes made of moonstone, hanging from a delicate chain. The moment the pendant caught the lamplight, King Darius went completely still. His cup clattered to the table, tea spilling across the dark wood as his eyes fixed on the jewelry with shock, and something that looked dangerously close to recognition. "Where did she get that?" he demanded, his voice rough with emotion. Sarah clutched the pendant protectively. It's been in my family for generations. Grandmother said it would protect me, that it would help me find my true path when the time was right. She paused, studying his face. Why? Do you recognize it? Before King Darius could answer, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and the sound of running feet echoed through the halls, followed by Captain Morrison's urgent voice. Your Majesty, you need to see this immediately. The Alpha King rose smoothly, his hand instinctively moving to the sword at his side. Stay close to me, he told Sarah, extending his hand to her once again. They followed Captain Morrison outside, where a crowd had gathered near the Pack's healing lodge. The building was small but well maintained, where the Pack's injured and sick came for treatment. Now, however, it emanated an aura of wrongness that made every werewolf present uneasy. We found this hidden beneath the floorboards, Captain Morrison reported, holding up a carved wooden box. The moment Sarah saw it, her blood ran cold. Dark energy pulsed from the container, making her wolf whimper and retreat deeper into her mind. King Darius took the box carefully, his expression grim. When he opened it, the smell that escaped made several pack members gag and step back. Inside lay a collection of items that reeked of dark magic, blackened herbs, vials of what looked like blood, and small cloth dolls pierced with silver needles. Curse objects, he said flatly. Someone has been practicing blood magic on this territory. His silver eyes swept the crowd until they landed on Beta Thomas, who had gone pale as moonlight. These were hidden in your healing lodge, Beta. Care to explain? I don't know how they got there, Thomas stammered. Anyone could have placed them. The scent, King Darius interrupted, his nostrils flaring as he inhaled deeply. The dark magic carries the scent of whoever cast it. His eyes began to glow with an inner light, the sign of a werewolf calling upon their deepest powers. And that scent is yours. The accusation hit the crowd like a lightning bolt. Beta Thomas took a step backward, his eyes darting around wildly as if looking for an escape route. This is impossible, Alpha Roderick breathed. Thomas has been my beta for 15 years. He would never— The evidence doesn't lie, King Darius said coldly. These curse objects were used to poison the healing magic, to make it appear corrupt and dangerous. The real question is why. His gaze locked onto Thomas with predatory focus. Why frame an innocent Omega for your crimes? Thomas's composure finally shattered completely. Because she doesn't belong here, he snarled, his face twisting with hatred. Her bloodline is poison. Her grandmother brought nothing but trouble to this pack, filling minds with stories of ancient prophecies and forgotten powers. The pack was peaceful before the Nightshade women arrived. So you decided to eliminate her, King Darius stated, his voice deadly quiet. You used blood magic to corrupt her healing, making the pack fear her gifts. You plan to have her executed for crimes you committed. The pack is stronger without her kind, Thomas spat. We don't need healers or prophecies or— His words cut off abruptly, as King Darius moved faster than the eye could follow. One moment the Alpha King was standing 10 feet away, the next his hand was wrapped around Thomas's throat, lifting the Beta clear off his feet. The raw power radiating from the king made every wolf present instinctively submit, dropping to their knees in the face of true dominance. You dare use blood magic on my territory, King Darius growled, his voice inhuman with rage. You dare frame an innocent under my protection. You dare threaten one who bears the mark of the moon goddess herself. As Thomas struggled uselessly against the king's grip, Sarah stepped forward, her hand touching Darius's arm gently. Your Majesty, she said softly, he's not worth staining your hands with blood. The contact seemed to calm the Alpha King slightly, though his grip on Thomas remained firm. You're right, he said, his voice returning to its normal register. Captain Morrison, place this traitor in silver chains. He'll face royal justice for his crimes. As the captain moved to comply, King Darius's eyes found Sarah's once more. I owe you an apology, he said formally, though his voice carried a note of something warmer. Your pack failed to protect you. They allowed fear and prejudice to blind them to the truth. And I owe you my life, Sarah replied, her heart racing as she realized the full implications of what had just occurred. Without his intervention, she would have died at sunset for crimes she never committed. Your life, King Darius said quietly, his silver eyes never leaving her face, is far more precious than you know, and I intend to make sure you understand exactly why. Chapter 5. The royal escort. Dawn broke over the Crescent Moonpack territory with a crystalline clarity that seemed to wash away the shadows of the previous day's revelations. Sarah stood at the window of the guest room where she'd spent the night, watching as King Darius's men prepared for departure. The royal guards moved with military precision, their midnight blue uniforms pristine despite having camped outdoors. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, turning from the window. To her surprise, it wasn't a servant or guard who entered, but King Darius himself. He'd traded his travel-worn clothes for fresh garments, black leather pants that emphasized his powerful legs, and a deep blue tunic that brought out the silver in his eyes. His dark hair was still damp from washing, and Sarah caught the scent of pine and something uniquely masculine that made her wolf stir restlessly. "Are you ready for the journey?" he asked, though his eyes performed their own assessment, taking in her simple brown traveling dress and the way her auburn hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders. "As ready as one can be for traveling to the royal palace," she replied, attempting to keep her voice light despite the nervous flutter in her stomach. "I've never been beyond pack territory before." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, perhaps even tenderness. "Then this will be an adventure for you." He stepped closer, and she caught that intoxicating scent again, stronger now. "I've arranged for you to have your own horse. Can you ride?" "Yes, though not side saddle in a dress," Sarah admitted with a rueful smile. "Grandmother taught me to ride astride. Said it was more practical for someone with healing duties." "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman," Darius said softly. "Perhaps that's why she gave you this." His fingers moved toward the pendant at her throat, stopping just short of touching it. "May I?" Sarah nodded, her breath catching as his fingers gently lifted the moonstone-eyed wolf pendant. The moment his skin made contact with the silver, the pendant began to glow with soft white light, and both of them gasped at the surge of power that flowed between them. "Impossible," he breathed, but he didn't release the pendant. Instead, his thumb traced over the carved wolf's head with reverent care. "This is no ordinary family heirloom. This is a royal blessing, an artifact created by the moon goddess herself for the first werewolf royal family." "What does that mean?" Sarah whispered, her heart racing not just from the magical energy still pulsing between them, but from his proximity. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the flecks of gold in his silver eyes. "It means," he said slowly, his gaze lifting to meet hers, "that your bloodline is far more significant than anyone realized. Only those of royal blood can activate these pendants, and only when they're in the presence of their true mate." The words hung between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. True mate. The term carried implications that went far beyond simple attraction or even love. It meant a bond sanctified by the moon goddess herself, a connection that transcended pack loyalty, social standing, and political considerations. "Your Majesty," Captain Morrison's voice called from outside the door, breaking the spell between them. "The horses are ready." Darius released the pendant reluctantly, but not before Sarah caught the promise in his eyes. "We'll discuss this further once we reach the palace," he said formally, though his voice carried an undertone of warmth meant for her alone. "There are things you need to know about your heritage, things that your grandmother may have kept from you to protect you." As they prepared to leave, Alpha Roderick approached with obvious reluctance. His face was haggard, aged by the shame of what had transpired under his leadership. "Your Majesty," he began formally, "I wish to apologize for my pack's failure. We should have protected her, should have investigated more thoroughly before—" "Your apology is noted," King Darius cut him off coldly, "but it changes nothing. An innocent was nearly executed under your watch, and it was only pure chance that prevented a grave injustice. You'll be hearing from the Royal Council regarding your continued fitness to lead this pack." Alpha Roderick's face went pale, but he nodded acceptance of the rebuke. "And Sarah," he added, turning to her with genuine regret, "I'm sorry, child. Your grandmother was right to warn you about hiding your gifts. We failed you as a pack, as family." Sarah studied the man who had been like a father figure to her for most of her life, now reduced to a shadow of his former authority. "I forgive you, Alpha," she said quietly, "but I can never forget." The journey to the royal palace would take 3 days through the kingdom of Lunaria's varied terrain. As they rode out from pack territory, Sarah found herself between King Darius and Captain Morrison, surrounded by guards who treated her with a respect she'd never experienced before. She was no longer just an Omega. She was under the personal protection of the Alpha King, which elevated her status beyond anything she'd ever imagined. The morning passed in relative silence as they traveled through dense forest, the horses' hooves muffled by thick carpets of fallen leaves. Sarah found herself stealing glances at King Darius, marveling at how naturally he sat in the saddle, how effortlessly he commanded not just his men but the very air around him. "Tell me about the palace," she said during their midday rest, when they'd stopped beside a crystal-clear stream to water the horses and stretch their legs. "It's ancient," he replied, settling beside her on a fallen log, close enough that their knees almost touched, built into the side of Mount Selene, carved from white stone that seems to glow under moonlight. There are gardens that have been tended for centuries, libraries filled with the accumulated knowledge of our people, and halls where the portraits of every Alpha King and Queen hang in eternal watch. "It sounds magnificent," Sarah breathed, trying to imagine such splendor. "It's also lonely," he admitted quietly, his voice carrying a note of vulnerability she hadn't heard before. "Power comes with isolation. Everyone who approaches the throne wants something. Territory, favor, political alliance. It's rare to meet someone who sees the man rather than the crown." Their eyes met, and Sarah felt that familiar electric current pass between them. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked boldly. "I see," he said slowly, his voice dropping to an intimate register, "the other half of my soul." Chapter 6. Revelations Under Starlight. By evening, they had made camp in a secluded meadow, surrounded by towering oak trees. The royal guards had efficiently established a perimeter and set up sleeping areas, but they maintained a respectful distance from their king and his protected charge. A warm fire crackled in the center of camp, casting dancing shadows on the surrounding trees. Sarah sat on her bedroll, brushing her hair before sleep, when King Darius approached carrying 2 steaming cups. "Tea," he explained, settling beside her with easy familiarity. "It's a blend from the palace gardens, chamomile and moon blossom. It should help you rest." "Thank you." She accepted the cup gratefully, inhaling the soothing aroma. "I have to admit, I never imagined I'd be sharing tea with the Alpha King under the stars. And I never imagined I'd find my mate imprisoned in a silver cage, accused of crimes she didn't commit," he replied, his tone mixing humor with underlying seriousness. There it was again, that word, mate. Sarah set down her cup with careful precision, needing something to do with her suddenly shaking hands. "Is that what we are?" she asked quietly. "Mates?" Darius was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "From the moment I saw you, I knew. My wolf recognized you instantly, even though my mind couldn't understand what was happening. The pendant's reaction only confirmed what I already felt in my bones." "But I'm just an omega from a small pack," Sarah protested. "You're the Alpha King of all werewolves." "The social divide alone means nothing," he interrupted firmly. "The moon goddess doesn't concern herself with pack politics when she creates true bonds. Besides," he added, his lips curving in a slight smile, "you're not just anything. That pendant you wear, those healing gifts you possess, they mark you as something extraordinary." Sarah fingered the pendant unconsciously. "What did my grandmother never tell me? You said there were things she kept secret to protect me." Darius shifted to face her more fully, his expression growing serious. "The Nightshade bloodline isn't just any family of healers. You're descended from the moon goddess's first chosen, the original royal healers who served the werewolf court centuries ago. Your ancestors were considered sacred, their gifts so powerful they could bring the dead back to life." "That's impossible," Sarah breathed. "Is it? You healed a cut on my hand that should have taken days to close. What else might you be capable of given proper training?" His silver eyes searched her face intently. "The pendant is one of 7 created by the moon goddess herself, each one bonded to a specific bloodline. They were meant to identify her chosen ones when the time of prophecy arrived." "Prophecy?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "An ancient foretelling that speaks of a great darkness rising, and 7 chosen ones who will stand against it. The last known heir of the Nightshade line was thought to have died over a century ago, but clearly the bloodline survived in hiding." He reached out to touch her hand gently. "Your grandmother didn't disappear randomly, Sarah. She was called away to fulfill her part of the prophecy, and now it seems the mantle has passed to you." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. "You're saying I'm some kind of prophesied savior?" I'm saying you're far more important than either of us realized, Darius replied softly, and that makes you extremely valuable and extremely dangerous to our enemies. As if summoned by his words, a low howl echoed through the night, followed by another, then another. The sound sent chills down Sarah's spine, not because it was a werewolf call, but because there was something wrong with it, something twisted and unnatural. King Darius was on his feet instantly, his hand on his sword. Around the camp, the royal guards had also sprung to attention, their weapons drawn and their eyes scanning the dark forest beyond the firelight. "Rogue wolves," Captain Morrison reported grimly, approaching with his sword already unsheathed. "But not normal rogues, Your Majesty. There's something corrupt about their scent." "Dark magic," Darius growled, his eyes beginning to glow with inner light. "Someone knows what we've discovered, and they're not happy about it." The howls were getting closer now, and Sarah could hear the crash of multiple bodies moving through the underbrush. Her pendant began to pulse with warm light against her chest, and she felt her healing gift stirring in response to some perceived threat. "How many?" King Darius demanded. "At least a dozen, possibly more," Morrison replied. "They're surrounding us." Darius turned to Sarah, his expression fierce with protective instinct. "Stay close to me," he commanded. "No matter what happens, don't leave my side." "I won't be helpless," Sarah said firmly, surprising them both with the steel in her voice. "If these are creatures twisted by dark magic, maybe my healing gift can help. Maybe I can purify them." "Absolutely not," Darius snarled. "I won't risk—" His words were cut off as the first of the corrupted rogues burst from the tree line. The creature had once been a werewolf, but dark magic had twisted it into something monstrous. Its fur was matted and black, its eyes glowed with unnatural red light, and its howl carried the sound of torment and rage. More creatures followed, their corrupted forms shambling toward the camp with single-minded purpose. But as they approached, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. They weren't attacking randomly. Every single one of them was focused directly on her. "They're here for me," she whispered, and in that moment she understood that her old life was truly over. Whatever she had been before, whatever simple dreams she might have harbored, were now as dead as the sunset execution she'd narrowly escaped. She was no longer just Sarah Nightshade, Omega of the Crescent Moon Pack. She was something far more dangerous, a prophesied heir with powers that could change the fate of all werewolves. And someone was willing to send corrupted monsters to stop her from reaching her destiny. Chapter 7. The Purifying Light. The first corrupted rogue launched itself through the air with inhuman speed, its claws extended and red eyes blazing with malevolent hunger. King Darius moved to intercept it, his sword singing as it cleared its sheath, but Sarah stepped forward before he could strike. "Wait!" she called out, her pendant flaring with brilliant white light. As the creature's claws came within inches of her face, she pressed her palms forward and released her healing gift in a way she'd never attempted before. Golden light erupted from her hands, washing over the corrupted wolf in waves of pure energy. The creature's agonized howl transformed into something else entirely, a cry of relief, of freedom from torment. The unnatural red glow faded from its eyes, the matted black fur returned to its natural brown, and the twisted features smoothed back into normal werewolf proportions. The now purified wolf collapsed at Sarah's feet, whimpering softly as it shifted back into human form. A young man, naked and shivering, but blessedly normal once again. "Impossible," Captain Morrison breathed, his sword still raised, but his expression stunned. "The corruption is being stripped away," King Darius said in wonder, though he remained protectively close to Sarah's side. "Your healing gift doesn't just mend wounds, it can cleanse dark magic itself." More corrupted rogues poured from the forest, at least 15 of them now visible in the firelight. But instead of fear, Sarah felt a surge of righteous determination. These weren't monsters to be slaughtered, they were victims to be saved. "Form a defensive circle around her," Darius commanded his guards. "Protect her while she works, but don't kill unless absolutely necessary. She's going to try to save them all." "Your Majesty, that's suicide," Morrison protested. "If her power fails—" "It won't fail," Sarah said firmly, though her heart was racing with the magnitude of what she was attempting. "I can feel their pain, their struggle against the corruption. They want to be free." She stepped toward the next group of approaching rogues, her pendant blazing like a miniature sun against her chest. The healing energy flowed through her more powerfully than ever before, as if the pendant was amplifying her natural gifts. Golden light surrounded her like an aura, and when the corrupted wolves came within range, the purifying energy washed over them in cascading waves. One by one they collapsed and shifted back to human form, freed from the dark magic that had twisted their souls. But with each purification, Sarah felt the toll on her own strength. Her legs began to tremble, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool night air. "That's enough," Darius said sharply, moving to steady her as she swayed. "You're pushing yourself too hard." "There are still more," she gasped, nodding toward the last 3 corrupted rogues that circled them warily, as if sensing the fate of their packmates. "Then we finish this together," he declared. In one fluid motion, he shifted into his wolf form, and Sarah's breath caught at the sight of him. King Darius's wolf was magnificent beyond description. Massive and powerful, with midnight black fur that seemed to absorb the firelight, and those same piercing silver eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. He was easily twice the size of a normal werewolf, radiating an aura of dominance that made every other wolf present, corrupted or not, instinctively submit. As the Alpha King's wolf positioned himself protectively in front of Sarah, she felt something remarkable happen. Their bond, already strong, seemed to deepen and solidify. She could sense his thoughts, feel his fierce protective instincts, and most amazingly, she could channel her healing power through their connection. Golden light began to emanate not just from Sarah, but from King Darius's wolf form as well. Together, they created a beacon of purifying energy that washed over the remaining corrupted rogues, cleansing them of their dark taint, and returning them to their natural forms. When the last corrupted wolf had been purified, Sarah collapsed to her knees, completely drained. Darius shifted back to human form instantly, catching her before she could fall completely. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair, holding her close to his bare chest. "You did something incredible, Sarah. You saved them all." Around them, 15 naked and confused humans sat or lay on the ground, all looking dazed but blessedly normal. Captain Morrison was already directing his men to provide blankets and water, though his expression remained stunned by what he'd witnessed. "How is this possible?" Morrison asked as he approached. "Dark magic corruption has never been reversible. Once a wolf is twisted by those forces, they're lost forever." "Not to her," Darius replied, his arms tightening protectively around Sarah. "She doesn't just heal bodies, she heals souls. The corruption couldn't stand against the purity of her gift." Sarah lifted her head weakly, looking at the people she'd saved. "They were sent here to capture me, weren't they? Someone corrupted them and pointed them in our direction like weapons." "Yes," Darius confirmed grimly. "Which means our enemies know exactly where we are and what you're capable of. We need to reach the palace as quickly as possible." One of the purified rogues, a middle-aged man with graying hair, struggled to his feet and approached them carefully. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice hoarse but respectful, I remember some of what happened while I was corrupted. The witch who did this to us, she spoke of a prophecy. She said the nightshade heir must not be allowed to reach the palace, that she would upset the balance of power that her kind has worked centuries to establish." "What witch?" Darius demanded. "Did you see her face?" "No, Your Majesty. She wore a mask of bone, and her power reeked of death itself. But I heard her speaking to someone through a scrying crystal, someone she called my queen." The man's face crumpled with the effort of remembering. "She said that if the corrupted rogues failed, they had other plans. Something about awakening the Sleeping Legion." Sarah felt Darius go rigid against her. "The Sleeping Legion?" she asked weakly. "An army of the dead," he replied, his voice tight with concern. "Werewolves who fell in battle centuries ago, their bodies preserved by dark magic and bound to serve whoever controls the necromantic rituals. If someone has the power to wake them—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah could hear the implications clearly enough. "Then we're not just dealing with a few rogue magic users," she said. "We're facing something much larger." "Yes," Darius agreed grimly, "and you, my dear mate, are at the center of it all." Termasi Tiumoxum Chapter 8. The Palace Gates. They rode hard through the second day, stopping only to rest the horses and allow the rescued rogues, now traveling as their escorts, to regain their strength. Sarah had insisted that the purified werewolves come with them to the palace, arguing that they deserved protection after being used as unwilling weapons. King Darius had agreed, though Sarah suspected it had more to do with his growing inability to refuse her anything than with tactical considerations. The mate bond between them was strengthening with every hour they spent together, and she found herself increasingly aware of his presence, his moods, even his thoughts during their quieter moments. As the sun began to set on their second day of travel, they crested a hill and Sarah got her first glimpse of the royal palace. Her breath caught in her throat at the magnificent sight spread before them. The palace was built into the side of Mount Selene, just as Darius had described, but no words could have prepared her for its breathtaking beauty. White stone walls seemed to glow with their own inner light, rising in graceful towers and sweeping battlements that appeared to have been carved from the mountain itself. Terraced gardens cascaded down the mountainside in a riot of color, even in the autumn season, and crystal-clear streams wound between the levels like silver ribbons. "It's beautiful," she whispered, unconsciously moving her horse closer to Darius's. "It's home," he replied simply, but there was pride in his voice as he watched her reaction. "And now, if you'll have it, it can be yours as well." The weight of that offer hung between them as they descended toward the palace gates. Guards in the familiar midnight blue uniforms snapped to attention as they recognized their king, but Sarah noticed their curious glances at her and the unusual party they'd brought with them. "Your Majesty," the captain of the palace guard greeted them formally as they approached the main entrance. "We received word of your early return via messenger hawk. The royal council has been informed and awaits your pleasure." "The council can wait," Darius replied curtly. "First, see that our rescued companions are given quarters, food and clothing. They've been through an ordeal and deserve comfort." "Of course, Your Majesty." The captain's gaze flicked to Sarah with obvious curiosity. "And the lady?" "Lady Sarah is to be given the rose suite in the royal wing," Darius declared, his tone carrying absolute authority. "She's under my personal protection and is to be treated with the highest respect." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. The rose suite in the royal wing. Even she knew enough about palace protocols to understand what that implied. Such quarters were reserved for the most honored guests or for potential royal consorts. As they dismounted and entered the palace proper, Sarah found herself overwhelmed by the grandeur surrounding her. Soaring ceilings were painted with scenes of werewolf history. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns on marble floors, and the very air seemed to hum with ancient power and dignity. "Darius," she said softly, using his given name for the first time, "are you certain about this? Bringing me here, giving me such prestigious quarters, people will talk. They'll assume correctly," he replied, stopping in the middle of a grand hallway lined with portraits of previous monarchs. His silver eyes met hers with unwavering intensity. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. What's happening between us, this bond we share, it's not just personal. The mate bond between an alpha king and his chosen queen affects the entire kingdom. It strengthens our people's connection to the moon goddess, enhances our collective power, and provides stability that goes far beyond politics." "Queen?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "If you'll have me," he said formally, though his voice carried deep emotion. "If you'll accept the mate bond fully and allow me to mark you as mine, you would become queen of all werewolves. But more than that," he stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek gently, "you would be my equal, my partner in all things. The moon goddess created us to rule together." Before Sarah could respond, the sharp click of heels on marble announced someone's approach. A woman appeared at the far end of the hallway, her presence commanding attention even from a distance. She was tall and elegant, with platinum blonde hair swept into an elaborate updo, and wearing a gown of midnight blue silk that probably cost more than most werewolves made in a year. "Your Majesty," the woman said as she approached, her voice cultured and smooth. "Welcome home. I trust your mission was successful." "Lady Victoria," Darius replied, his tone noticeably cooler than it had been moments before. "Indeed. Allow me to present Lady Sarah Nightshade." "Sarah, this is Lady Victoria Ashford, daughter of the Duke of the Eastern Territories and a member of the Royal Council." Lady Victoria's green eyes appraised Sarah with the calculating precision of a predator sizing up potential prey. "Nightshade," she repeated thoughtfully. "How fascinating. I thought that bloodline was extinct." "As did many people," Darius replied evenly. "It seems there's much about the old bloodlines that we still don't understand." "Indeed." Victoria's smile was perfectly polite and completely cold. I do hope you'll be comfortable during your visit, Lady Sarah. Palace life can be quite overwhelming for those unaccustomed to court society. The subtle insult was delivered so smoothly that it took Sarah a moment to recognize it for what it was. But when she did, she lifted her chin with quiet dignity. I'm sure I'll manage, Lady Victoria. After all, adapting to new circumstances is something my family has always excelled at. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, surprise, perhaps even respect for Sarah's subtle comeback. How delightfully spirited. I'm sure the other court ladies will find you quite interesting. I'm sure they will, Darius interjected, his tone carrying a warning that made Victoria's smile falter slightly. If you'll excuse us, Lady Victoria, I was just escorting Lady Sarah to her quarters. The journey has been long and eventful. Of course, Your Majesty. Victoria curtsied with perfect form, but Sarah caught the flash of something dangerous in her eyes as she straightened. I do hope we'll have a chance to speak more privately soon, Lady Sarah. I find myself quite curious about your unique heritage. As Victoria glided away, her silk skirts rustling against the marble floor, Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the palace's temperature. She doesn't like me, she observed quietly. Victoria doesn't like anyone she perceives as a threat to her position, Darius replied, his hand moving to the small of Sarah's back as he guided her down the hallway. She's been angling for a royal marriage for years, convinced that her noble bloodline and political connections make her the obvious choice for queen. And now I've appeared and disrupted her plans. Now you've appeared and made her plans irrelevant, he corrected firmly. The moon goddess doesn't concern herself with political ambitions when she creates true bonds. As they reached the ornate doors of the Rose Suite, Darius turned to face her fully. Sarah, I need you to be careful here. The palace is full of political intrigue, and not everyone will be pleased by your presence. Some will see you as an opportunity, others as a threat. Trust no one completely except me. What about you? She asked softly. Can I trust you completely? He stepped closer, his hand coming up to touch the pendant at her throat. Once again it flared with warm light at his touch, and the mate bond hummed between them like a living thing. You can trust that I will protect you with my life, he said solemnly. You can trust that I will never lie to you, and you can trust that what I feel for you goes far beyond duty or political necessity. His thumb traced along her jawline with gentle reverence. The question is whether you can trust your own feelings enough to accept what's between us. As he leaned down and pressed a soft, lingering kiss to her forehead, Sarah closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of the bond connecting them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, political machinations, and enemies hidden behind court smiles. But tonight, she was safe in the knowledge that she had found something she'd never dared dream of, a love powerful enough to change the fate of kingdoms. Chapter 9. The Royal Council's Challenge. Sarah slept fitfully in the Rose Suite, her dreams filled with images of corrupted wolves, ancient prophecies and silver eyes that promised both love and danger. She woke before dawn to the sound of urgent voices in the corridor outside her chambers, followed by a sharp knock at her door. Lady Sarah, came a servant's nervous voice. His Majesty requests your immediate presence in the council chamber. The Royal Council has called an emergency session. Sarah's stomach tightened with apprehension as she quickly dressed in the elegant gown that had been provided for her, deep emerald silk that complemented her auburn hair and brought out the green flecks in her eyes. The pendant at her throat pulsed with warm energy, as if sensing the importance of what was to come. The council chamber was an impressive circular room, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations sacred to werewolf lore. A massive round table dominated the space, surrounded by high-backed chairs occupied by the most powerful werewolves in the kingdom. At the head sat King Darius, magnificent in formal royal attire, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders despite his composed expression. Our Lady Sarah, announced Chancellor Aldrich, an elderly wolf with sharp features and calculating eyes. Please join us. We have much to discuss regarding your unique situation. As Sarah took the empty chair beside Darius, she caught his reassuring glance before surveying the other council members. Lady Victoria sat directly across from her, looking regal in burgundy velvet, her green eyes gleaming with barely concealed satisfaction. The other faces around the table ranged from curious to openly hostile. Members of the council, Darius began formally, I've called this session to inform you of recent discoveries regarding the Nightshade bloodline and its significance to our kingdom's future. Your Majesty, interrupted Duke Ashford, Victoria's father, and a man whose political ambitions were legendary, before we discuss bloodlines and ancient history, perhaps we should address the more pressing matter of succession. The kingdom requires stability, and that means a proper royal marriage to a suitable bride from an established noble family. The Duke's eyes flicked meaningfully toward his daughter, and Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks as she realized this was a coordinated attack on her legitimacy. Furthermore, added Lord Blackwood, another council member whose allegiance was clearly bought and paid for, bringing an unknown Omega with supposed magical abilities directly into the royal wing raises serious questions about security and propriety. What do we really know about this woman's background or loyalties? You question my judgment? Darius's voice dropped to a dangerous level, his eyes beginning to glow with inner light. Never, Your Majesty, Duke Ashford replied smoothly. But the crown belongs not just to you but to all werewolves. Major decisions, especially regarding marriage and succession, have always been made with council input. Sarah felt the weight of hostile stares around the table, but instead of shrinking back, she found herself rising to her feet. The pendant at her throat began to glow, and she felt power flowing through her veins, not just her healing gift, but something deeper and more ancient. If you question my worthiness, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber, then perhaps I should demonstrate exactly what the Nightshade bloodline brings to this kingdom. Without warning, she pressed her palms flat on the table's surface. Golden light erupted from her hands, racing across the ancient wood in intricate patterns that began to glow with otherworldly radiance. The patterns were runes, ancient werewolf script that had been carved into the table centuries ago, but had long since faded from view. Gasps echoed around the chamber as the runes blazed to life, revealing prophecies and blessings written by the kingdom's founders. But more shocking still was what happened next. The portraits of every previous Alpha King and Queen that lined the chamber walls began to glow, and ghostly figures stepped forward from their frames. The Nightshade heir has awakened, spoke the spirit of the first Alpha King, his voice resonating with ancient power. The bloodline thought lost has returned to fulfill the prophecy spoken at our kingdom's founding. Another royal spirit, the queen who had ruled 2 centuries past, turned her ethereal gaze on the stunned council members. 7 bloodlines were chosen by the moon goddess to protect our people. 6 have been lost to time and persecution. Only one remains, and she stands before you now. Impossible, breathed Chancellor Aldrich, his face pale with shock. Not impossible, corrected Darius, rising to stand beside Sarah, his hand finding hers. Destined. The moon goddess herself has marked Sarah as my true mate and your future queen. The pendant she wears, her healing abilities, even her power to purify dark magic, all are signs that cannot be denied. Lady Victoria's composed mask finally cracked, revealing the fury beneath. This is preposterous. You cannot seriously intend to elevate some nobody Omega above nobles who have served this kingdom for generations. I can, and I will, Darius replied with absolute finality. But more than that, Sarah will elevate herself. Show them, he said quietly to Sarah. Show them what you're truly capable of. Sarah closed her eyes and reached deep within herself, accessing power she'd never known she possessed. The pendant blazed like a star against her chest, and when she opened her eyes, they were glowing with pure golden light. I am Sarah of House Nightshade, she declared, her voice echoing with otherworldly authority, heir to the first healers, blessed by the moon goddess, chosen to stand against the darkness that rises. I claim my birthright not through noble blood or political alliance, but through sacred duty and the bond that ties my soul to your kings. The ghostly royal spirits began to fade, but not before the first queen spoke one final time. The choice is made. The bond is blessed. Let none stand against what the moon goddess has ordained. As the spirits vanished and the glowing runes slowly dimmed, the council chamber fell into stunned silence. Duke Ashford looked as if he'd swallowed poison, while Lady Victoria sat rigid with barely controlled rage. The council will vote, Chancellor Aldrich said weakly, though everyone present knew the outcome was no longer in question. There will be no vote, Darius declared, his arm sliding around Sarah's waist in a gesture of unmistakable possession and protection. The moon goddess has spoken through signs that cannot be denied. Sarah Nightshade is my chosen mate and your future queen. Any who object may present their concerns to the goddess herself. Chapter 10. The Marking Ceremony. 3 days later, the palace buzzed with preparations for a ceremony that would unite not just two souls, but the earthly and divine realms. The marking ceremony was the most sacred ritual in werewolf culture, where true mates bonded before the moon goddess herself, sealing their union for eternity. Sarah stood in her chambers as royal seamstresses made final adjustments to her gown, a masterpiece of white silk embroidered with silver threads that caught the light like moonbeams. The bodice was fitted with delicate beadwork that formed the pattern of her family's sigil, while the flowing skirt was designed to move like liquid starlight. "You look beautiful," said Maya, who had arrived from the Crescent Moon Pack that morning, along with the few pack members who had always supported Sarah. Her childhood friend's eyes were bright with tears of joy. "Your grandmother would be so proud. I wish she were here," Sarah whispered, touching the pendant at her throat. "I have so many questions about our family's history, about the prophecy." "Perhaps she is here," Maya suggested gently, "in ways we can't see." A soft knock interrupted them, and Captain Morrison entered with a formal bow. "Lady Sarah, His Majesty requests a moment before the ceremony begins." Sarah found Darius in the palace's ancient chapel, a circular chamber with a domed ceiling open to the sky above. Moonlight streamed down through the opening, creating a pool of silver radiance in the center of the room, where they would soon exchange vows. He was magnificent in his ceremonial robes, deep blue velvet embroidered with silver wolves and ancient runes, with a circlet of white gold resting on his dark hair. But it was his eyes that took her breath away, silver pools filled with love, desire, and something that looked very much like awe. "You're certain about this?" he asked softly as she approached. "Once I mark you, once we complete the bond, there will be no going back. You'll be bound to me, to this kingdom, to a destiny that may demand everything from us." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Sarah replied, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "The moon goddess didn't bring us together by accident. Everything that happened, the accusations, the corruption, even the danger, it all led us to this moment." He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly, as if memorizing the sensation. "I love you, Sarah Nightshade, not because of your gifts or your bloodline or the prophecy, but because you're the other half of my soul. You make me whole in ways I never knew I was broken. And I love you," she whispered back. "My alpha, my king, my mate." The ceremony that followed was unlike anything the kingdom had ever witnessed. As Sarah and Darius knelt in the pool of moonlight, the very air around them began to shimmer with divine presence. The moon goddess herself seemed to descend into the chapel, her radiance filling every corner of the sacred space. When Darius spoke the ancient vows, his voice resonated with power that made the stone walls hum in harmony. When Sarah responded with her own oath of eternal bonding, her pendant blazed so brightly that everyone present had to shield their eyes. But it was the marking itself that sealed their fate forever. As Darius's canines elongated and he gently bit the junction between Sarah's neck and shoulder, silver fire raced through their joined souls. The bond that had been growing between them exploded into full existence, connecting them on every possible level, physical, emotional, spiritual. Sarah gasped as power unlike anything she'd ever imagined flooded through her. She could feel Darius's strength becoming part of her, while her healing gift flowed into him, creating a perfect circle of shared ability. But more than that, she could sense something awakening in the very foundations of the kingdom, as if their bonding had strengthened every werewolf in the realm. "Behold," came a voice that seemed to emanate from the moonlight itself, "the true queen of all werewolves, chosen and blessed, marked and bound. Let all who would threaten this realm know that the Nightshade heir has claimed her birthright." As the divine presence faded, Darius helped Sarah to her feet, both of them glowing with residual power from the completed bond. The assembled witnesses, nobles, pack leaders, and common werewolves alike, dropped to their knees in reverence. "Rise," Queen Sarah commanded, her voice carrying new authority that came not from political position, but from sacred blessing. "Rise and know that a new age dawns for our people. The prophecy spoken centuries ago has begun to unfold, and we will face whatever darkness rises with unity and strength." But even as the crowd erupted in cheers and celebration began throughout the palace, Sarah felt a chill of premonition. Through the bond, she sensed Darius's similar unease. Their enemy, the mysterious queen who commanded dark magic and corrupted souls, would not take this development lightly. The real battle for the kingdom's future was only just beginning. As if summoned by her thoughts, a raven landed on the chapel's windowsill, a message tied to its leg with black ribbon. Captain Morrison retrieved it carefully, his face grim as he read the contents. "Your Majesties," he reported formally, "a message from the Northern Territories. The Sleeping Legion has awakened. Thousands of undead werewolves march south toward the capital, led by a figure the survivors describe as a Queen of Shadows." Sarah felt Darius's hand tighten around hers, their newly forged bond pulsing with shared determination. They had found love, claimed their destiny, and united their kingdom. Now they would discover if that was enough to stand against the darkness that had been centuries in the making. "Then we meet them," Queen Sarah declared, her healing light already beginning to merge with her mate's royal power. "Together, we are stronger than any evil that dares threaten our people." The first chapter of their reign had ended. The first chapter of their greatest trial was about to begin. As the moon reached its zenith above the palace, bathing the kingdom in silver light, the newly bonded king and queen stood ready to face whatever came next. Their love had been tested by betrayal and persecution, forged in battle and blessed by the divine. Now it would be their kingdom's greatest weapon against the rising dark. The end of Part 1. The story continues in The Shadow Queen's War, where Sarah and Darius must unite the werewolf kingdoms against an ancient evil, discover the full extent of Sarah's prophetic destiny, and prove that love truly can conquer all.